I want to explain why the court services shut down yesterday. So, I challenged the court services in a case HIA 2025-163 when they refused to file my plenary summons. An affidavit was drafted by a solicitor within the central office. She's the Principal Registrar. She's a registered solicitor with the Law Society of Ireland, and she drafted this sworn testimony. And on paragraph 17, it states, in order to ascertain whether pleadings fall within any of the exemptions provided for in SI 492 of 2014, staff in the central office will consider the pleadings provided. In the majority of cases, it is clear where the proceedings fall within an exemption. Now, the statutory instrument that Principal Registrar is pointing to is this one here. This statutory instrument is our responsibility. We have to make sure we have the correct stamp fee placed on whatever documents attract a fee. That's not up to the court services. We're the ones who decide that. The functions of the court services under the Court Services Act 1998 are to manage the courts, provide support services for judges, provide information on the court system to the public, provide, manage and maintain court buildings, and provide facilities for users of the courts. That's what we are. We're users of the courts. And under Section 9 of the same Act, independence to exercise judicial functions. No function conferred on or power vested in the court service, the board, or the chief executive under this act shall be exercised as to interfere with the conduct of the part of the business of the courts required by law, to be transacted by or before one or more judges, or to impugn the independence of a judge in the performance of his or her functions, or a person other than a judge in the performance of limited functions of a judicial nature. So basically what the court services are doing is obstructing not just my access to the courts, but other people's access to the courts. But in this instance, it's my access to the court. Now, I did not give the court services permission to look at my documents. So we have personal data protection in Ireland. It's under the Data Protection Act 2018. This concerns our GDPR. So under Section 36, where a requirement that suitable and specific measures to be taken to safeguard the fundamental rights and freedoms of data subjects, that's who we are, data subjects, in processing personal data for those subjects is imposed by the Act or regulations made under this Act. Those measures may include, in particular, the following: explicit consent of the data subject for the processing of his or her personal data for one or more specific purposes. So when I handed in my plenary summons into the central office, they were unissued. It was personal information. It wasn't on the public record. Yet the court services, as affirmed in the Principal Registrar's affidavit in paragraph 17, and there's other confirmation in this, they considered what was in the plenary summons. They're not allowed to do that. That's a judicial function. That's outside what the functions of the service provide. There's nothing in here about making decisions on the contents of plenary summonses, right? They have to facilitate users of the court. So what I identified is that a person in the court services contravened Section 144 of the Data Protection Act, which is under Chapter 7, unauthorized disclosure by a processor. So the court services processed my application or my issuing of plenary summonses, but they disclosed the data to staff in there within the service to make a judicial decision. Again, disclosure, and that's a criminal act. And on indictment, it's a €50,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison, or both. So the disclosure of personal data obtained without authority. So the staff that made decisions on my plenary summonses, which were unissued, they obtained that information without any authority, because I didn't give them any authority, and the court service certainly did not have the authority to disclose my data to them. And again, that's another serious crime with a €50,000 fine and up to 5 years in jail. And this is where the corporate body itself, known as the court services, can be prosecuted for the actions of the staff within the central office. Not only did they breach my data, they used whatever they found in the plenary summons to unlawfully, because this was an unlawful act, breaching my data. So the person dishonestly, so it was a dishonest act with the intention of making a gain for himself or causing a loss to another. They caused a loss to me by not issuing my 7 plenary summonses. And I had to go and initiate and sue them for that. And the corporate body, that's under Section 6 of the Criminal Justice Theft and Fraud Offences Act 2001. So the corporate body, known as the court service, is responsible for the actions of their employees and managers and staff under Section 58 of the Criminal Justice Theft and Fraud Offences Act. Liability for offences by bodies corporate and unincorporated. Okay? So the court services is a corporate body, and it was established under Section 4 of the Court Services Act. On the establishment day, there'll be established a body known as, that's the Irish of it, and in the English, court services, and it'll be known as, it can sue and be sued. Okay, so it's a corporate body. Now, I have the evidence, and that was the case that I tried to, I held them accountable for it. And then when I accepted their affidavit, I told the court to strike out the case because I didn't want to further anything that, I was in pursuit of justice, not conflict. So at the same time, I have to hold the Principal Registrar and the court services accountable. So when I went into the office there yesterday to file this affidavit, which concerns the criminal matters, which I've just outlined here, when I filed that into the central office there yesterday at 10:30, they refused to file it, and I was waiting until 1:30. They closed the office down. They obstructed access to justice, not just for me, but for everyone else. And again, I got a letter back from the court services where the intended proceedings are used to seek leave of the court to issue proceedings and enclosed document does not appear. So again, they went into what is a private, unfiled, off the record, private disclosure of information to whoever staff in there. Again, they breached the data. And this is what they're doing all the time in the court services. They're unlawfully looking at our documents. These are junior staff who are basically fresh out of college, and they disappear around the corner with our documents, with our affidavits, with our plenary summonses, and they go to solicitors like Naomi Tamlin, who's employed. This person is a solicitor since 2011, and she is employed by the court service as a Principal Registrar who works in the central office along with other solicitors. And they give advice to these fresh out of college kids who actually don't know anything about the functions that they're meant to be providing to the public, provide facilities for users for the courts. I'm not going to stand for this at all, because we have a constitutional right to access the courts. And that right comes from Article 34 of the Constitution of Ireland. And it's not up to individual people. These are people making individual decisions, stopping us from accessing justice. And here we have it under Article 34. Justice shall be administered in courts established by law by judges appointed in the manner provided by this Constitution, and save in such special and limited cases as may be prescribed by law, shall be administered in public. The courts of first instance comprises of the courts of first instance, a court of appeal, and a court of final appeal. And we can bring any matter before the courts under Article 33.1. The courts of first instance shall include a high court vested with full original jurisdiction in and power to determine all matters and questions, whether of law or fact, civil or criminal. So I'm not going to put up with this. I'm going to be back in the courts tomorrow. I'm going to have to file yet more proceedings against the court services for not doing their job. They're not doing their job. They're actually acting outside what their statutory functions provide. They're committing criminal acts under the Data Protection Act 2018, the Criminal Justice Theft and Fraud Offences Act 2001, and I have it in sworn affidavit. These people cannot get away with this. They're committing crimes, they're blocking our access to justice, and that's a constitutional right. It's not up to them to decide the merits of our plenary summonses or affidavits. These are judicial decisions that this corporate body are making, and these fresh out of college kids running around the back of the central office to these qualified and registered solicitors who are in the pay of the court services. We have to stand up to this overreach, because it's obstructing our access to justice, and that access to justice is a constitutional entitlement.